field. Well, I could. And I headed over there, and I was there for quite a long time. We didn't even have to call the police, but got everything settled down. But I trained chaplains, and right now I left behind in Northern California 38 chaplains. And the training course I created, and I've got them placed in various places. One chaplain is with the Warriors, the basketball team in California.
Oh, yes.
And
yeah.
Others in housing developments, and housing projects. They're busy there. They all have jobs. They all are busy, but it's very strict. Being a chaplain, you absolutely have to walk the straight and narrow without any curving at all whatsoever. Yeah. And the people trust us. One woman, a very plain-looking woman, and I just loved her from the first time I saw her. She's Portuguese, and she's just an ordinary-looking person, and she's not really attractive. But boy, she has a heart that draws everybody in. And she was one day walking on a street in Brentwood, California, not OJ's Brentwood, but the one up Northern California. And she was walking down the street, and a woman came across the street and said, "I need to talk to you." Now, they had never met. They had never seen each other before. And she says, "I've got a sister in the hospital, and it's very serious. Could you go to see her?" And so she said, "Sure." Now, she had no idea what her identity was or anything, but the godly power coming out of her was such that it attracted people. And she's very attractive, by the way, when you see her, even though that her physical appearance, it's because of the Holy Spirit within her. She went to this hospital. It was Kaiser Hospital. It's a newer hospital in Antioch. And when she got there, this woman was out of her mind. She could hear her screaming before she got off the elevator, screaming in the room. And it was pretty sad. Now, when she came in, the boys, her sons, came in. They saw her come off the elevator, and they came and asked what she was doing there. And she says, "I'm a chaplain," and they're atheists, it turns out, and said, "Well, what are you doing here?" "Well, I came to have prayer for your mother." "Well, what good is that going to do? I got to ask you that." She says, "Well, I've been asked to do it, and I'm here to do so. And if you want to stay, you can. If not, you can go back in the room here while I deal with your mother." They did. And she started praying for this woman. And when she was praying, I kid you not, the woman suddenly stopped screaming, stopped flailing about in the bed, and really came to her senses.
Wow.
And so anyway, she, Priscilla Martinez is the chaplain I'm talking about. And so anyway, she then said her goodbyes and was at the elevator, and the sons came out, and they saw her, didn't say anything, walked in the room, came rushing out before she got on the elevator, and said, what new medicine did they give her? She said, "They didn't take any medicine to her." Well, how did she change? And she said, "The medicine of the Lord, prayer."
Amen.
And they had to really think about that one, because her mother was dying. She was screaming. She was out of her head totally. And just after that visit, and it was good, so Chaplain Priscilla just got back on the elevator and went on her way. But she was just picked out on the street, among the people on the street, because they knew they could talk to her. And when I left California, I put her in charge of the chaplains because I wanted it to go on, and she still keeps chaplain classes. She sat in, she went through my whole chaplain thing, and in the meantime, she got the materials that I used, and then she also augmented the materials with her own ideas for teaching, which were just great. And she has a regular class going on, and they're getting them everywhere. And I always tell them, with that fire, get those chaplains up to that fire going on up in paradise, things like that. And also, one chaplain loves animals like I do. I just have a passion for animals. And I'll send him up there whenever there's fires to make sure the animals are okay. And he does, So, and the chaplains tell me the same thing as I have felt. That is the one place you finally find out who you actually are, what your purpose is in life, and there's nothing more satisfying than serving others. I couldn't imagine a life not doing that. And that's exactly what we do, and our time belongs to the public, and we're always available. And, a couple of things I have in the training, and I'm kind of independent as far as denomination is concerned at this point. And so I'm not with a particular denomination, but I absolutely make it clear that nobody can drink, period. No beer, no wine, no nothing.
Right.
And here's the reason I do that. Because I know there was a time back in my younger days that I'd have a martini or something before dinner, or maybe have a beer at night after the day was done. But then something would happen. I'd wake up badly. I mean, I was just trying to crawl out of bed. You had to fight sleep and everything else. And I saw a movie by a friend of mine, by the way, who's Charlton Heston. He was a friend of mine. He was a gentleman, a nice guy. In fact, he taught Sunday school in California.
Really?
And oh yeah, and he's just a tremendous guy. And he was well. Okay, where are we going? I got interested in you, and I forgot about where we were going here.
You're talking
Okay.
about you're talking about Holy Spirit filled people and how that just exudes off of them, and people can see that here goes a man or a woman of God. It's clear, and that you train people to do exactly that.
And you know what? The reason for no drinking, I saw a movie with Chuck, in which his wife was dying. It was the president's lady. There was a lady that had been divorced that this president had married, and everybody condemned him for that because you can't marry anybody divorced. And anyway, he was sitting on a landing. She was very ill and was about to die. He was on a landing in the middle of the stairs, and he was sound asleep in the chair, and she called, and boy, he was up and ran up the stairs. And I looked at that, and I said, you know what, I couldn't do that, and I think I know why. And I stopped then, and that was the end of it for drinking of any kind, anything, even a glass of wine, which is pretty continental. You can do that everywhere, but I won't, because you know what, you have to be in fitness all times to be ready to serve others. And my chaplains in training, if I got a phone call at 2 a.m. on an emergency, I call one, they'd have to get out of bed and come with me. I wanted them to really get a feeling of what chaplaincy is. And you give up all rights willingly to yourself in order to serve others. And you belong to God and God only, and you're there for the convenience of others. There's no convenience for you. You're there for the convenience of others. And I'm telling you, though, there's people that came in, some of the least likely to be a good chaplain. I'd see them when they come in to report for class that wanted to do it. They turned out to be the most dynamite chaplains of all. And they told me the same thing. They said, I really didn't know who I was until I came into the chaplaincy. I always loved God, but I really found out who I was and how meaningful that life is at this moment. So I'm very, as you can tell, I mean, you must tell, I'm sure somebody there knows, had figured out I was a chaplain, but I have been one. That was my main interest when I got ordained, was to be a chaplain. And now I'm able to teach chaplains. So, but you got to walk with that at all times. No flirting whatsoever. I mean, you never look at any other human being as an object for your pleasure. You never. That is absolutely forbidden. I know one time I was doing a funeral, and my funerals were superb. I mean, people said it was like a documentary. And people would come when they found out I was doing a funeral just to hear the funeral, because I did such a real search of their life. And like they said, it was like a documentary of seeing that person in the life. And I picked out things, even the eccentricities, which people would laugh about. But it was all a very fulfilling service. I did over 1,000 funerals out there, all different. And that is something this funeral home called me. I had not worked for them before, but they all wanted me to do their funerals because they knew the reports. And the funeral director was there, and a parent had died, and they had some daughters, young daughters. They were grown, but young, you know. And as one was walking by the graveside, the funeral director looked her up and down. He was literally seducing her with his eyes. And I would never do another funeral for him. And I told him what a disappointment that was to me, because we're here to serve. We're not here to have any personal desires for anybody. And the only legs you should be interested in is your wife's legs. And that's it. And it's true. I mean, people have to be safe around you at all times. And of course, it's kind of funny. You know, I broke my leg recently, and it's healing now. And it's just about healed at this point. And so I'm a veteran, and I went to the VA hospital, of course, and they took good care of me, and I was there for the hospital for a few days. But they asked me these questions like they do all veterans. They said, do you have you ever got depressed? I said,
Mm.
well, not really. I get concerned about things at times. Well, have you ever thought of, taking your life? I said, are you kidding? With a cute wife like I got, I'm not going anywhere.
That's right.
And it's true that I feel that way. I mean, my wife is the love of my life. And she was just great during this time with this broken leg, trying to get that all fixed up. But she's the one that worked at the mental hospital at one time. And I must tell you this. She had such a heart for her patients. And they put Down syndrome people in the insane asylums. And that was wrong, I think.
Oh, yeah.
The people who can't think us maybe quite as quickly as we can, but those people can't even think of evil. They're really quite pure, these Down syndrome people. And so she worked with them, would take them on field trips in her van. And so the Stockton Municipal Auditorium. And now Stockton is where we lived in that area, and that's where she served in one of the hospitals. So she brought them in the van and took them to the auditorium to see Dolly Parton. And they were able to be seated in front of the stage down front. And so Dolly Parton saw them, and during intermission, she came down to talk to these people, and they were delighted. And you know something? I'll always love Dolly Parton the rest of my life for her coming down and making those people so happy,
Yes.
So I've,
Amen.
but anyway, I think that's so true that the people that are supposed to chaplains need to watch themselves so often. You've got to always be ready, like Priscilla. She's just walking down the street talking, but she was ready. And somebody comes into her, didn't even know her, and she was immediate. I'm going immediately.
Yeah.
And she did. And a miracle happened, and the two atheist sons had something to think about for sure. I don't know
That's
whatever
right.
happened to them, but I thought that was great. I mean, I could picture that scene.
Yes.
And I know, I feel like the chaplain has got to be so safe. Anybody will be safe to come to him. I had a thing in New York. I was a chaplain in New York for quite a while. And I had an advantage because there was a television program that was a talk show that was on every day. And it was in New York only at that time, but it reached the whole metropolitan area. And the host took a liking to me and had me on frequently with these celebrities because I had been, when I heard chaplain, a chaplain to the world of show business, dealing with movie stars and musicians and circus people and all of that. And it worked very, very well because I understood the problems that they had, because I had done some theatrical work in my younger days, including movies. And so I understood that, and I was very good in talking to these various big-name movie stars that were there. But this television program in New York, and every at least once a month I was on, but sometimes I was on more than that. And I met one movie star who was battling cancer that nobody knew anything about, and I was able to really minister to him after the take was over, after the program was over. But you know what? This program was good, not because that I sought recognition, but people knew who I was. When I walked down any street in New York, they knew exactly who I was because of the TV show. And they felt free to come up to me, and I'd be walking from part A to B, and sometimes a cop would say, "Chaplain, we need you." And suddenly I'd sit around and be on a situation. And so that was a good thing. And I was always ready, and I always felt the people came first. But it's been an enjoyable time. I have enjoyed the ministry. And then, for several years in travel. Oh, let me tell you this story that happened because it was kind of neat. I had an appointment over in New Jersey, so I was headed to the George Washington Bridge. And as I got there, I saw the traffic stacking up until eventually I was sitting still. And so I said, what on earth has happened? A cop came by, saw me, and said, "Come on, Chaplain, we need you." So I just left my car, got out of the car, walked with him on the bridge, and the bridge was cleared, And he said, "We got a real problem here." And he pointed up, and there was a woman at the top of the bridge ready to jump off. That's a high bridge. Oh, man, this was awful. She was ready to go. And he said, "You're the only hope that we have." The only hope we really have is God. And I'm working with God, so let's see what happens. I had no idea what I was going to say. And so I went down to the bottom, and as I looked down, I got to the place where she could see me, and I looked down at her, I said, no, ma'am, I'm not. But I'm curious about something. And she kind of leaned her head down. I said, that's a beautiful dress you're wearing. That river is the filthiest river in the States. That dress is going to be a mess. Do you know that was what did it? That broke that whole sis thing. She grabbed hold of the thing, the cops went up and brought her down.
Wow.
And
Praise the
there
Lord.
was nothing like that. But God, like I tell the chaplains, you get in a situation that are all going to be alike, and you can't say, I've got it down. You're just going to have God's guidance any place you go, and He'll tell you what to say, and that's exactly what happened there. And then I got in my car and headed off and made my appointment over in New Jersey. So I love the ministry. I couldn't think about being in anything except something of real service to people. And my heart is very out to anybody who needs me and wants me. I did work with the homeless in California. I've had a few things. I slowed down a little bit when I came up here, but I want to get involved because there's a church I go to that is much involved in the whole area, and including the Boise Rescue Mission. And I've done homeless ministry before, and I loved it. I was able to put a face on all the homeless people, and I knew where all their hiding places was. In fact, we rescued a little girl off the streets. It was something that was incredible. But I knew where they were, and like I went to see one homeless man. I said, how did you do during the rain last night? He said, well, I found an apartment that was abandoned. I got inside, and I walked across the floor, and the floor caved in, and I fell down and landed of a workhorse that was there, one of the wooden horses.
Oh.
And he said, but it was okay. I had a dry place to sleep. And, I really liked him so much, and I would have dinner with him. We had a thing where we served meals to the homeless, and I would come in ahead of time to help serve the meals, and then I would sit down and have dinner with one or two of them. And I got to know them by name, and my wife came down one time with me, and I'd also give a message. The ministers would rotate, and the ministers would come in and give a message, about 20 minutes, and then they would go. I was the only one, they told me, that would stay and would have dinner with them first, and then after it was over, stay and help clean up, mop the floors or whatever else was needed. But that's service, and I just want to do that. But anyway, I'd love to come to your church sometime. I really would, Pastor. You have no idea the admiration I have for you. And I had it before I ever heard from you. And I was just so, gosh almighty, I just was on cloud. You were like one of the heroes because I followed you very closely. And I think, boy, oh boy, if I was in Ohio, I'd be in his church.
Well, that's very kind. That's very kind, Austin. I appreciate that. We have, folks, I just want to tell you a little something about Austin, and then Austin, I'll toss it back to you. He is so kind, and we have a nice dialogue back and forth when I send him. He is gracious enough to allow me to post an article, and we call it the Sunday Sermon Column.
Yeah. I love it.
Yes, and so Austin's always telling me, hey, I need the sermon because the sanctuary is filling up now. We're gonna have to move chairs out of the overflow area. So please get in here because people are starting to get a little bit anxious about it. And he says that stuff to me all the time, folks. He's just a dear brother, and it's amazing. We've never met personally, but I feel like I know you, Austin.
I feel the same. I feel the same, very, very much so. And and you clean out the bowl. They had to kick all the babies out of the nursery to make room for the people. We have 8 million, and we're going on 9 million now. And
wow!
Whenever I check back into my website, I have at least 100 more that have suddenly checked in. And it's interesting about that website. It's not expensive. I got it was done very cheaply by a friend of mine, put together. It's like a mom and pop website with no frills. When I say no frills, I can't highlight text that I put in my stories or anything. And the thing is, it is so inexpensive that I don't have to worry about raising money for it. because whatever it is, and I don't have any advertising. I mean, advertising is good, but with me, I get so upset when I'm trying to read something and ads keep flying up in my face to get rid of that one, and another one takes its place. Yeah. But I feel like I don't need it because I can afford it easily, and this is a service to the people, and they get a chance to see 7 wonderful writers. In fact, all of you writers, all of you are better writers than I am, frankly. And I just get so much out of your columns, but the people are really, really responding to them. And I have actually gotten a lot of for the stories. And, not too many of them picked up on this Santa Claus thing, this recent thing.
Yes.
Well, you were talking. It's your show. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was hoping that you would mention that because you posted that article just the other day about this latest, and may I call it the latest insanity from the leftists. Now they're attacking Santa Claus.
Perfect description. Perfect description. Well, now they want Santa Claus to be a non-gender Santa Claus. In other words, like a trans Santa. And the LGBTQ stuff, working with the governors, with politicians, and the leftist politicians go for this kind of a thing. I couldn't imagine Santa Claus coming out switch. Years ago to this, where the leftists decided that we have to have a black Santa Claus. This is racist not to have a black Santa Claus. Well, Santa Claus is a Scandinavian. He's up at the North Pole. And you know what? They did even worse. They decided to have a black woman be Santa Claus. That really was bombed. I mean, everybody hated that. Now they're trying to get a feminine Claus or one with binary Santa Claus. And I'm furious about it. Now, Santa Claus is all man. And, I heard that, I said, I wonder what Mrs. Claus would say about all this, It's just plain ridiculous. But hopefully it's not going to have any weight. But they're trying to control every avenue of our life. This because I've had experience. I don't know if you know this, but I spent some time behind the Iron Curtain back in the days.
Oh, I didn't.
I learned everything. Man, they released secrets to me. And I just came in as a teacher, and I've taught, and they like teachers because it was this one teacher that came in, John Dewey, that came in and took the Moscow teaching things back to the public schools in America. And so, I mean, anyway, they received me very well, and I learned a lot of the secrets, and I know what happens. It's brutal back there. Do you know that if you go and a figure is making a speech, everybody applauds to see who's the first to stop applauding at the end? And if it is, they take them to jail and torture them. I kid you not.
Wow.
So those applause just goes on and on and on and on until eventually the whole thing buffles down. But if one person stops applauding before he's arrested on the spot, if somebody dies, like a man was taken to police on, and they don't need any reason to grab you up and arrest you. It's happening to America now. But they grab him up, arrest him, put him in jail. He was tortured to death. And listen to this. They throw the body in the back of a pickup truck, go to his home, take the body, throw it on the porch with a thud, pound on the door, get back in the truck, and the family opens the door and sees the loved one didn't have to deal with that. It's awful. One man, I saw a drunk man on a bicycle back there. And it was just too painful for him, but he's riding his bike drunk. And the people hate it. I mean, you can't get any service up there because they know that all the money they make if they have a shop, it all goes to the mother country. They have just a pennies to live on. This is what they have. So there's no choice about anything there. And you know what? They had a circus there, the Moscow Circus. And they had that famous clown there, Grimaldi, is that his name? The very famous Russian clown. Oh, not Popo. Anyway, I know who it is. Popov the clown. But he was a great clown. I saw him on the Dinah Shore show, and he was very charming. But none of the performers liked him because he had been appointed. And when you're appointed something, you have to do it. And they announced that he was going to be the spy for the company and report to the officials what everybody is doing. And the word will get out, and of course, nobody likes that. Somebody is spying on them, and anything they may say or do, that they will pay a great price for. So that's the type of thing. Now, the point is, communism started working its way into America. It started with communist producers of a lot of the movies. And then they started getting into Congress, and that's the thing I could never understand. We have so many communists in Congress now, it would startle you and your listeners to know about it. And the point is, this whole thing with Donald Trump has nothing to do with Donald Trump. The war is not against him. It's against us, the American people, 63 million of us who put him into office.
Yes.
And by putting him into office, we are now responsible, and they're mad at us because we're the one behind getting him in there, and he's doing things that Russia doesn't like. So that is the thing. The war is against us because they know that America is the one country they cannot put under communist rule. And just about most countries have been gone under the New World Order by having communists be in charge of it, except America. This is the only country standing in the way of America being turned over completely to communist dictatorship, which I think is something that we're holding. And the reason for that is because we have churches all over America. We have Christians all over America. A Christian's mind cannot be enslaved. And that's something the communists realize. And that's why they hate the churches so much. Look at the Democrats. They hate the churches. They're trying to start war. And with the Christians, they make comments. But did you know that Nancy Pelosi tried to go to the Catholic Church in San Francisco to take communion? And the priest refused her communion.
Good for
I
him.
think that was a great priest. I'd like to shake his hand. I may go over there and find him. But he did, because what she's doing, she is defiling the most sacred ordinance of the church. Taking communion when she is really anything but a Christian.
That's right.
She's not a good person. I think she's certifiable, quite frankly, after seeing some of her nonsense that's going on.
Yeah.
But so the war is against us, and as long as we hold together, they won't take us over. The best thing people can do is to make sure church is a part of their everyday life. That is a strength that America has always had. And we must never let that strength go. Now, people started getting out of the church because there was a lot of conflicts. You know, when you have a guy named George Soros, who's a multi-billionaire, and he's quite a character. He's behind all these government things that are going on, and he's also very much communist, and he's wanting to see it turned into communism, because he would then be the potentate of the whole world. And that's what he's hoping for. And you know what? The communists, when they come in, nothing's going to improve in America. I've been to those countries. I've seen them. I've been to Venezuela before it became communist. And Venezuela, I spent some time there. And, you know, Venezuela was a very sophisticated city. In fact, you couldn't go downtown without wearing a suit. I kid you not. I mean, it was very good. The people were dressed. The military was dressed sharply and were very nice. The people had everything they wanted. And the communists managed to get in, take that over, and now people do not have enough to eat. There's trash. San Francisco is unlivable right now. The communists have taken that over already. And they have trash in the streets, feces in the street. I mean, and homeless is so grown up there. They got tent cities all over the place. And it is unlivable, and it smells. It smells very bad. And that's what the future is for those of us who would do that. But we have this weapon. Let's get back to church. Let's find a church. If you don't have one, find one. Find a minister who works and is completely in companionship with the Holy Spirit. And
Yes.
Go there every week, support that church. And I'm going to tell you, that's going to be recognized. And the more people that come off the streets on the Sunday morning and wind up in church, the more the communists are going to have to back up.
Yes,
That's
amen.
been the strength all along. And Alexis de Tocqueville, when he came to America, watching it as a new country, and already was prosperous and already was successful, and he said he couldn't really understand how a country so young could be so prosperous and have such leadership. And he said, then I went into the churches and heard the fiery sermons on Sunday morning. Then I understood. America is great because she is good. And be good to be great, and you're going to be.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we have to be good. To be good, we have to also show that by our actions. church is great. I mean, there's some great churches around. Out here where I am, they have great preachers all over the place. And I haven't been to church for a while because of this broken leg. I got kind of sidelined for a while. But we have good pastors, and I will, as soon as I get this leg healed, I'll get down there. I'd like to get involved with the homeless ministry because I love doing that. As I say, I knew where the hiding places was. I knew where to find them. I served them dinner. I sat and had dinner with them. I helped mop and clean up the place after the service. You know what? They told me I was the only minister that did that. The rest of them came in and did their service and left, you know. And I was the only minister that stayed. But I want to have hands on the whole thing, you know.
Yes,
and,
absolutely, absolutely.
But
well, Austin,
I've known some. Yes.
Let's. No, you're fine. We're going to take a break here for our sponsors. And Kathy, if there are any questions out there on social media, then you can let us know when we come back from the break. And then anybody in the queue that has a question for Pastor Austin, that would be fantastic. And brother, when we come back, let's continue on this conversation. It is really important, I believe, that Americans, especially the Christians, understand what is happening inside of their churches. Many churches are becoming captured, if you will, by the enemy, and that grieves me to say that. But that's what's happening in good many places. So we'll pursue that when we come back.
How can you have confidence in God when no matter what you do, you still go to heaven? Everybody's going to heaven. That's the new age.
Yeah, that's right.
So I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%. Yeah. And I didn't mean to step on your lines. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm all excited being with you and having talked to you personally. To me, this is the big deal. It is.
You're too kind, Austin. You're too kind. Jared, let's go to our sponsors, and then we'll be back after that.
Healthy living through LifeVantage. Scientific research has validated oxidative stress as the root cause of aging and most disease. Oxidative stress is the result of the production of free radicals at the cellular level that damage our bodies. Protandim reduces free radical damage by 40% in 30 days. It does this by triggering the body's intelligence, activating the NRF2 protein, which in turn produces its own powerful protective antioxidant enzymes. LifeVantage Protandim, NRF1 and NRF2 work together to enable your body to rejuvenate itself on a massive scale, whether by upregulating your genes' ability to produce their own antioxidants, your cell's ability to produce mitochondria, or your digestive system's ability to regulate bacteria. We're helping you stay on top of the aging process while delivering the mental clarity and overall well-being you need every day to get the absolute most of your life. More information is available at www.abcgotit.com/MIKA68. www.abcgotit.com/MIKA68.
Hi friends, Works LLC is a manufacturer of custom-made holsters, mag carriers, knife sheaths, and accessories. Works is your one-stop shop for high-quality inside or outside the waistband concealed carry holster. Works LLC is a Christian and family-owned and operated company that values made in the USA. Visit Works LLC, www.werkz.com, works.com, Works LLC, 855-937-5901, 855-937-5901, Works LLC.
That was a moment.
All right,
that
folks,
was a moment.
Thanks for supporting our sponsors. Austin was telling a story during the break. That's why we're laughing. Oh my goodness. You can't make that kind of stuff up, can you, Austin? That just happens.
No, you can't. And you know what? I did television shows at every place in the country because I was an narrator of the show and I was the one picked out for all these things. And every town I went on some show. And up in Minneapolis, there was a television program, a cooking show that I was to go on. Now, this woman, you could tell, was the cook. I mean, Martha Stewart was nothing compared to her. This woman had it all together. And so she was making some biscuits. These biscuits were the most delicious biscuits you'll find. Put them in the oven, shut it, let them bake a while, and came and sat to talk to me. Well, I started telling her some of these stories of the Lipizzan show, and time started going by. And suddenly, as we're sitting there, smoke starts pouring over the studio and over to us. "Oh my God!" She jumped up. The chair fell over behind her. She rushed over and opened it up, and of course the biscuits had burned up. And then the camera settled on me, and I guess I was the one to solve all problems. So I just looked at the deadpan in the camera and said, "Let that be a lesson to you, Mr. and Mrs. Minnesota. Never burn your biscuits behind you." and so that took care of the situation. But I had a good time out there, though.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Okay. Kathy, are there any questions out on social media for Austin?
Yes, I
Okay.
have. Chad is wanting to know if Pastor Austin has ever read your book, Mike, called Make the Pulpit Great Again. And he wants to know, how do we get pastors to actually speak out about the crimes being committed on the citizens of their localities?
How do we deal with the citizens that are victims of crimes, or the crime itself?
Go ahead, Kathy.
How do we get
Let me
the
understand
pastors?
the question. Okay, Miss Kathy. Well, would you ask the question again so I'll make sure I have it right?
Okay, he wants to know, how do we get pastors to actually speak out about the crimes being committed on the citizens?
Okay, well, you got one here you're talking to that does speak out on that. And with my column has quite a following. It's got news sites that pick it up all over the world, really. And I get comments on it. I've gotten comments from Europe and everything else on the column. But I tackle these things. Yes. I do it whether I'm on media or whatever else. I tackle it. And I tackle things, too, that a lot of pastors say, well, they shouldn't talk about. And I have talked about abortion on the air. I have talked about, and of course, the sexualizing. And human trafficking, I find that appalling. But no, I do address all these issues, and this man is right. What is his name? You called me, the man?
Chad.
Chad. Anyway, the man that called me, just rest assured that I am doing it. I'm doing it, and I've also done it when I'm speaking from pulpits. Now, I don't get up there full political and vote for so-and-so and this and that. I put it together. It's just an everyday story that we are living with day by day. What do we do about it? And just like now, we have to encourage people, and even the lay people, the people that come to church and maybe just come now and then, be sure and let your people know about church and tell the greatest strength we have. And like Alex de Tocqueville, he was right. But America's great because she's good. And if we cease to be good, we will no longer be great. Because he got that just from visiting the churches and their fiery sermons. There was a day that pastors preached these social issues, and they didn't let it go. And of course, the prohibition came from pastors preaching. But I do grab some of these things. I don't let anything get by me. And also getting self in the way, I talk about that. But I really appreciate the question, because not every pastor does it, but I encourage pastors. We live in this society, and we have to go. Now, here's something kind of interesting. I knew a pastor back in Indiana. His name was Reverend Zapp, APP. He was a big, rotund man, but a great man, loved God. And he was also a Shriner. Now, I can't quite figure out that connection, but he was a Shriner, and he went to it wholeheartedly. Then I guess to help crippled children, which the Shrine does do that magnificently. Well, he went in the Shrine one day, and the people tried to test him every so often. He said, "Hey, Pastor, how about buying us all a drink?" He said, "Sure. Hey, bartender, give them all a cup of coffee." Well, that is unsettled. Yeah. That was the end of that. Everybody laughed. They still respected him as a pastor. But you know what? I've had that too, where I was one time at a yacht club. I was a chaplain of the yacht clubs out in California. And I was there for the blessing of the fleet, but the opening of boating day. And so there's one said that, and there's a microphone nearby. I didn't know it was picking up everything we were saying. Said, "Hey, chaplain, can I get you a drink?" And I said, "Oh, thank you so much. That was so nice of you. But, you know, I am on an ecclesiastical diet." Well, you know what? Everybody in the place laughed because they heard it coming over the microphone. But it also reinstated the fact that I was a little separate from everybody, even though I'm with everybody. And so we have to really, the pastors had a state of almost godlike one back in the days, my days. And a pastor, and that's why this thing with Reverend Zapp, it was so telling. Now, that was way back. I was back in probably the 40s or 50s, and somewhere in there. And they'll try to test you from time to time. I had a thing one time at the yacht club where they had the blessing of the fleet, and everybody went out on the boat. One boat missed the blessing, got out ahead or something. That was the only boat that broke down during the whole parade around Bethel Island. They had to tow the boat back to us. When I got there, the man said, well, I guess I should have stayed for the blessing. I said, yes, you should have. Then he got into the boat, tried to put the key in, and he started, and nothing happened. And it would not click. It would not start. Now, he was testing me in the process, but he said, hey, chaplain, how don't you pray for us? Pray for it. Now, this was kind of a gentle mockery, but I said, sure, I'll pray for it. And listen to this. I actually prayed, and then I had the boldness to say, put the key in. He did, turned it, and it started back immediately. I think I could have started a new church at that moment. Everybody on the dock was astonished on it. But, you're going to have people test you, and that is fine if they do test you. And I tell pastors when we do a wedding or something, instead of the champagne, we get a glass of water, we ask them for apple juice. A lot of them have that, apple cider, and use that to toast with. But we have to be the example. Yeah. Like Priscilla, that's my favorite chaplain. We talk on the phone quite often. She's doing a great job keeping the chaplaincy going out there and training the chaplains. She's a very, very good soul, and her husband is a great man. I really love him. So that's the thing. Again, I want to encourage everybody listening. Invite somebody to come to church and say, that is our real strength, just being there.
Yes.
And you might just hear something that's going to be very important to you, because you're going to hear that every time you're in church. But you might find something specific that's really important to you. But take that time just for peace and for the relaxation and to think about God. And you know what? If we get to get back to the nation, what happened when Madalyn Murray O'Hair took prayer out of school, that was kind of the end of it. The churches started emptying out. Do you know the crime during that year that she took prayer out of school increased 100%? I kid you not. That's the statistics. I knew Madalyn Murray O'Hair. I was the only person in the world, the only Christian she ever invited to her house for dinner. And I went. And I had invited her to a show, the Lipizzan show, when we came through. And then she knew I was a Christian, but she invited me. They picked me up in their limousine, their personal limousine, went to their house, and she was nothing like you would see on television. But she was actually had a class, like an Ayn Rand is how I saw her, had classical music on, was fixing a beautiful dinner, and she was talking daily. On a Phil Donahue, you'd see her blogger, you'd see it on various shows, but she was a different woman on her own. And then she finally told me, she said, you seem to be a very intelligent man. I said, well, thank you so much. And she said, do you really believe this stuff? I said, oh, yeah, I really do. Mm-hmm. She said, but how? Why? And I said, well, I'll tell you. And so I gave her a testimony. I started talking about something that happened to me. I don't know if you know about this. When a man had a heart attack during a circus, and I stopped the show, and he was dead. And we had prayer with everybody in the circus tent, and he came through. Anyway, I gave her that whole scenario, everything that had happened. And I figured she'd cut me off at any moment. But she didn't. And that went on for an hour and a half. I gave this testimony to her.
Wow. And
she said, I've been listening to an evangelist on television. Really? Now, nobody in the world knew this. And right now, some of your people are hearing it for the first time. And she said, now, I don't believe what he preaches. She had to have that identification. But she said, I do believe he believes what he preaches. Well, that was all well and good, but the same pastor fell ignominiously. I mean, he fell hard. And it was the main news of the day. Well, she got mad at me, and you were all just playing me for a fool and all of that. But then she went on and got out and got murdered. And I met the guy at her office, her atheist office, that murdered them and cut them into pieces and put them into barrels. It was awful. And I was the only one, because I don't know. I think she was searching, and I think this particular evangelist let her down. I never had a heart to tell the evangelist. I think even his son, I was on a program with him, and his son, I didn't tell him, because the guy was so, at that time, so weak that I think he might have killed himself if he'd have known that he missed the big time. If he'd have stayed true, we might have seen her saved officially.
Yeah.
But we don't know what happened before then, because I was nice to her. But she wouldn't. Then she was mad at me at the last, because then I was involved with that program, Ancient Secrets of the Bible.
Yes.
I was a researcher for that program and a writer, and also it was one of the characters that talk on the show. And but she now was mad at that too. But he would have had the big time. But I can only imagine that with her relationship with me, and I wrote her a letter when she wrote me back, and I said, Madeline, you're not getting by with this. I think you're too strong a woman for this. I think you're one that would take a friendship seriously. You would not just throw it away because of some trifling thing of something you don't believe right like I do. And so that was the last thing that I had written to her. And who knows, maybe she did give that prayer of salvation before she was murdered. It's very possible. And her granddaughter and the other man that was there.
Yeah.
So that was that. You never know who you're going to meet. And like I tell ministers, like with Jimmy Swaggart, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say his name. I said it. It was him that did this. You don't know who you're preaching to when you're on television. And you don't know who you're preaching to in your congregation. You don't know who slipped in the back or anything else. But you have to preach, and you have to have your life match up to your preaching
Yes.
at all times.
Yes, amen.
At all times.
Amen.
And
That's
of
right.
course, that was very scandalous with this minister, with this evangelist.
Yes,
And it was
yes.
very sorrowful. I hated it, but I didn't have the nerve to tell his son about it. Because I figured he'd tell his father, and I didn't want that to be a breaking point for him, because he had two sides to him. The one side, he loved God more than I was on a program with him one time. But one side, he loved God. He'd rather have his hand burned off in front of him than to offend God. And the other part of him was he had a strong reproductive instinct within him. And that kind of drove him to things that he shouldn't have been doing.
Yes.
So
Yes. Wow.
I said
wow.
that nicely as possible.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, you did. You sure did,
Okay.
Austin. Kathy, is there any other questions out there?
I have one from inside the green room.
Okay.
They want to know, Martha wants to know if you are affiliated with the Corporate Chaplains of America.
No, I'm not a part of that, but tell, what was the girl's name? Michael? Oh, no, Michael. Was
Martha.
it Michael?
Martha.
Micah. Or
Martha.
Martha.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay. Excuse me, Martha. If I ever met you, I'll call you by the right name, I promise. I don't belong to any chaplains organizations because we have our own now. But I love to fellowship with chaplains anywhere I find them or anywhere they find me, which is quite usual. But no, I don't belong to it, but it's a good thing for chaplains to belong to it. I belonged to a ministry association at one time, and I got a little bit upset because sometimes they got upset, lost the temper with each other. And I just said, well, I think maybe I'm better off without this for right now. But our chaplaincy thing, we have our own. And she told me the last time 68 chaplains we now have in Northern California. That's covering everything. I mean, the places they've gotten jobs is phenomenal. And they've been doing well. This Pastor Priscilla, Chaplain Priscilla, do you know she was doing work over at the Shepherd's Gate, abused women. And you know that she was doing so well that some of the women had to go to court and face their abuser. That is hard for anybody, especially if you're married to somebody and they got that chain around your neck always, that mental chain. Mm-hmm. She would go to court with him. And you know what the court said to her after a couple of times? They said, we need more people like you in this courtroom. Mm-hmm. Because she was there, she got everybody calmed down and everything went smoothly. And that's some of the things a chaplain would do. So it's again, you willingly give up all rights to yourself. You don't think of your own convenience. Your convenience comes last. You think of the convenience of those who need you. And you spring out of bed like I do at 2 a.m. often. One time I was getting ready to sit down for supper, and I hadn't eaten all day, and I was pretty famished. And suddenly the phone rang, and I said, see you later. And my son had come from Idaho back down there to visit California. And he asked Shirley about it. She told him, she said, somebody called and said, "You didn't need that happened often?" He said, "Oh yeah." She said, "That's very dedicated." And anytime that someone needs you, you go then, and you're there of service to other people. You'll get privileges, but before I go into a police scene or any other chapel, we don't just barge our way in. We go in like the one thing that I was going to say to the officer. I'm Chaplain Miles. Can I be of assistance? And most times they say, "Hey, Chaplain, we're glad to see you. Come in." And sometimes maybe they have it all under control, and that's fine too. But you never barge in. You go through all your right departments and work with the police and work with these managers and everything else. So it's a great ministry, and I'd like to teach chaplaincy in a church here that we've been going to. It's a big church, and it's they're involved with everything here. In fact, they have a television broadcast regarding opioids. Idaho has one of the biggest opioid problems in the country. Would you believe it? As peaceful and great and as nice and relaxed as the people are, we have that underlying problem. So they did one with television crews and everything, and meetings like that will take place in the church. But they're involved in everything, and there's any number of ministries I can get involved in, but I'm going to wait till its leg is up in better shape, and then we'll go for it. But you know what? I feel the most comfortable in some of these things. Now, I've got to tell you this, though. Sometimes you don't realize certain things. I was always calm in emergencies and always felt the most at ease when an emergency is going on around me, like that kid with the gun going to shoot the family up. I can find once in a fire that burned down, and I had a friend that lived it back there. And so I was also ministering to people that had their houses burned. It was quite a thing. So anyway, okay, where were we going with this? Don't tell me I did this again.
We're talking about chaplaincy.
Yeah, I'm talking about chaplaincy, but about the being ready at all times for the chaplaincy.
Yep.
And being in the conditions, the critical condition. I was at the VA hospital, and I was going on an appointment, and I was in Martinez, California. And so I was at the VA hospital, and I was down there waiting for the doctor, and the doctor had moved a room in the urgent care section. So I went there, and I was sitting in the doctor I had to go see. And so there was a line of seats there along the wall, and at the end there, you saw some glass-plated offices. Just glass covered. You could see inside everything was going on. Well, I was sitting there, and they took my blood pressure, and suddenly I heard this yelling and screaming, and I looked back, and there was a man that was going through a mental crisis. And he was into it with a couple of people there. And so the cop finally had to push him into the room. And finally the cop hit him with his fist and knocked him down. When I was serious, the man could have caused a lot of problems. He was talking about the Army, how I was no good. And he had a lot of things. He probably has worked in the Army, has been in the Army. And I know how that can go. So I watched all of that, and I felt perfectly at ease. And I thought, well, you know what? If they seem to have everybody down there they need, so I'm just going to stay where I am. Normally, I'd have gone down there, see if I could be of help. Well, I didn't know this, but when they came back to stay with the doctor's office, they first took my blood pressure again. Now, I felt no tensions. I felt perfectly at ease, and it had jumped up to an amazing height, the blood pressure. Now, I was calm. I was not upset by what was going on. I felt comfortable, and yet my inward self was fixed by it, was hurt by it. And that's what happened. Isn't that amazing? So tension can come on you when you don't even know it sometimes.
Yes.
So
yes. Amen.
But
brother.
But I'm telling you, chaplaincy in New York is great. I told you about this woman on the bridge, didn't I? Yeah, I did. I told you about her.
Yep. Yes.
And then there was another time I was walking, and this man recognized me on the street, and I wrapped up some Christmas presents. I got a grant to get a bunch of Bibles from American Bible Society, and I gift wrapped them. And went on Christmas looking for people who needed friends, you know. And most of them recognized me, as I say, because of the TV show. And this one man was slumping down the street and looked at me and said hello. I said, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, I've got something for you. I want you to know God loves you." And he looked, and tears started streaming down his face. Now, he looked like he was a laborer, or, he looked like a working man. And he looked, the tears came down, and I said, well, let's talk for a minute. And anyway, it turned out he was on his way to the East River, and he was going to throw himself in and kill himself.
Wow.
And it's changed the whole thing. Is that amazing?
That's a divine appointment, Austin.
That was. And
Yes.
I've gone through other things. And then when I was coming back home on the subway that night, and that Christmas Eve was kind of neat. There was a place there with a big Christmas tree, and you had to have reservations, and they didn't have any. But it said, for you, Chaplain, come in. They sat me right next to the Christmas tree. Then I wanted to go to St. Patrick's Cathedral because I wanted to see Bishop Sheen was going to give an address. And I wanted to see that. And so I got back there in the back to see if I could get in. I said, I'm a chaplain working in County. I'm sorry, we had to turn down a Russian Orthodox chaplain because, the tickets been given out months ago. But then I said, well, thank you. And he said, but again, chaplain, we do have one for you. I gave it to him so I could go in. I sat in the front row with all the dignitaries to see Bishop Sheen told a story about there are really two Christmases in life. The first is when Christ was born in us. The second, of course, is when we celebrate him here on earth. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
And so I had a great Christmas. So that night I got on the subway to go back, and I saw a couple of people that were sitting in a chair in the seat going, and they had such somber look, a couple of black people, somber look, and I knew something was wrong. So I walked over and said, hey, can I sit with you for just a moment? And they said, sure. And I said, I'm Chaplain Miles. I'd just like to get acquainted with you. It turned out they were coming home from the mortuary where they had just identified a family member that had been murdered. So we had church on the subway. Isn't that something?
Amen.
And,
Amen.
and I had Bibles for them, and I had one Bible left. And as I was getting to get off the train, I saw the man that runs the subway just gets in the middle of the train, puts his head out, looks around, gives the okay to go and come. And so I stuck my head into his section where he was up there and said, hey, Merry Christmas, brother. And I said, here's a man who'd probably like to be home with his family this Christmas Eve. And man, his face lit up. He was studying me all over. And when I went out on the platform, the train took off. All the way down that long track getting out of Queens, he was waving his hand at me.
Yes, amen. Hallelujah.
But you know what?
Hallelujah.
But we have to be ready at all times. We have to present ourselves at all times so people not ever fear to come to us.
Amen.
And
amen.
like Chaplain Priscilla, that's I wrote a story on her, and it went worldwide. And I've had people that have written me about it. It was a great story. I'm planning to do another one eventually on her because she's done such fantastic work. But I got a lot of response on that, and people told me, "Wow, I thought I was too old to do anything." And she's not a spring chicken by any means, but boy, she does work. She does the work, and plus the fact you can feel the anointing coming from her.
Right.
Isn't that something?
You're never too old. You're never too old as long as you're drawing a breath.
Oh, that's so true. That is so true.
Amen. Austin, believe it or not, we're out of time.
Oh, we are.
We already spent an hour chatting. Can you believe that?
Chatting? You were doing most of the talking. I
mean, how can people? If people want to contact you, Austin, how can they do that?
They can do it by email.
Okay. What's the email address?
It's Chaplain Miles. That Chaplain is not like Charlie Chaplin with just I-N. It's CHAPLAIN. It's Chaplain Miles at AOL.com. And that's it. They can write to me anytime.
Yes.
Anytime. And,
there you go, folks. So let him know.
I really would. I'm looking forward to our meeting personally one day. As I say, I feel very humble with that website. I mean, it's going great. It's got a big thing. But again, every writer on there, including you, especially you, is better writers than I've ever been. But I seem to make it with it. But I just admire every writer I've got. They're all just spectacular.
Yes, they are. And
plus,
to be a part
you're preaching your Sunday service. By the way, everybody looks forward to that because a lot of people don't make it to church, and they do. But some watch for it after because they know it's going to be on all day. And so you get a double thing. But I don't like putting the babies out of the nursery just so that I can get people in for your.
That's right.
Hey, dear friend, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, dear brother. I appreciate you taking the time. Folks, that's all we've got time for. And listen, this was just the first of many conversations I'm sure Austin and I are going to have because this deserves a sequel. So we'll bring Austin back on very soon. Folks, thanks for joining me today. Remember, renewing our minds is not an option. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.